Welcome to the second virtual meeting of the Ascension Parish Council. This meeting being held on May 7th, beginning now at 6 p.m. Also, I want to remind everyone that the public comment period is now open. You have had instructions all week long how to access that. You can certainly do so now, but for the next 30 minutes. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all these gentlemen for being with us virtually. We appreciate it. Everyone there in the office, thank you very much. Mr. President, good to see all of you. I'm glad to know that thus far, as I know, everyone remains well as your families. I'm pleased to hear that. So at this point, the meeting is called to order. Coach Thomas, will you please lead us in the prayer, followed by the pledge?
Thank you, ma'am. Lord God, as we come at this hour in the evening, we come with praise, come with honor, come thank you, Lord, for the many blessings that you bestowed upon us. Oh, Father, as we endeavor in the parish business, I pray, Lord, that you would continue to bless each of us, bless our families, and bless those that have gone on. We ask, Lord, that you bless the Jackson family, Lord, and God, we thank you for all you've done for us. And Lord, as we bow here tonight to take care of parish business, we ask this in your name and your name alone. In Jesus' name we pray. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. And we all say it, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Yay. Thank you very much, Coach Thomas. I appreciate that. All of the councilmen are present tonight. There are no chairs additions, so at this time, under item 3, the council secretary, following the protocol approved by our legal counsel in order to have this video virtual meeting, the council secretary will read the entire agenda. And if anyone has any comment they're wanting to make out there in the public, be sure to go ahead and be calling in to do that upon the completion of the reading of the entire agenda. Cinnamon, thank you.
Presentation, proclamation to proclaim Hurricane Preparedness Week in Ascension Parish. Parish President's report. Committee recommendations. Personnel Committee appointments. Personnel Chairman Michael Mason, appointment to Board of Adjustments, appointments to Planning and Zoning Commission, appointments to Fire Protection District Number 3 Board. Approval of contract for implementation of server maintenance for Fire Protection Number 3 maintenance and IT support for computer servers and software systems. Approval of lowest responsive bid for precast reinforced box culverts, design precast and pipe Inc. Approval of request for proposal for scrap metal recycling for Department of Public Works. Approval of contract for professional medical services for inmates at the Ascension Parish Jail. Thai Gotro Physician's Assistant, $49,500. Approval of contract renewal with Dr. Lisa Bailey, DDS, to perform necessary dental and professional services to the Ascension Parish Jail inmates to include dental exams, extractions, and x-rays. Approval of lowest responsive bid for the installation of emergency generators, transfer switches, and fuel tanks in various locations in Ascension Parish, Department of Public Works, Acadian Renovations Limited. Approval of change order number 1 for lighting replacement at Jackie Robinson Park for year 2019. Parish of Ascension project number PM 1907-001 to access the site and mobilize heavy equipment, $2,276.19, ADG Engineering. Approval of certificate of substantial completion for the lighting replacement project at Jackie Robinson Park for year 2019, project number PM 1907-001. Approval of change order number 2, Hope Villa Pump Station Replacement, PM 1901-008, $4,944.31 for relocating the existing pump from Debbie Street Pump Station to Smith Road Pump Station. Approval of substantial completion for the re-roofing of Ascension Parish Jail Project, contract number PM 1902-002. Resolution to authorize Parish President Clint Whitmore to enter into and execute on behalf of the parish a contract or contracts with the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development, being state project number H010960, federal aid project number H010960, Louisiana 30 roundabouts at Tanger Mall and I-10 Ascension Parish. Renewal of professional services contract for engineering review agency services not to exceed $350,000, CSRS Inc. Approval of change order, new courthouse construction, the Lemoyne Company LLC, to increase contract time by 38 days. Approval of change order, new courthouse construction, the Lemoyne Company LLC, to increase contract by $191,313 for access control and door hardware changes, fire suppression, mechanical and electrical modifications, additions associated with final room layout changes. Approval to submit Bureau of Justice Assistance for year 2020 Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding Program 2020 H2218 LABD grant application. Approval of cooperative endeavor agreement between the Parish of Ascension and Town of Sorrento generator purchase under the FEMA HMGP 1786 DRLA number 128 grant, 75% federal, 25% match local. Approval of balancing change order TO201 for 2019 asphalt reconstruction and overlay task 2 in the amount of $93,641.89 to balance out and pay in full task 2. Approval of intergovernmental agreement by and between Ascension Parish Government and Ascension Parish Sheriff's Office to share cost of expansion. Parish shall pay an additional $50,000 for a total of $650,000. The Sheriff's Office shall pay an additional $16,000 for a total of $96,000 to the cost of the expansion to dorms currently occupied by female prisoners. Approval of lowest responsive bid for renovations at the Ascension Parish Jail Women's Dormitory to include 2,050 square feet interior renovations and 550 square feet addition to the existing women's dorm area. Sienna Construction LLC. Finance items, revenue and expenditures report, and monthly contract report March and April. Introduction of ordinance budget amendment number 1 to amend the 2020 budget. Public hearings and ordinances. Reading of ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish zoning map from medium intensity residential to crossroad commercial zoning review ID PZ 2209.20 for Dwight Poirier, duly authorized for the Robert Family Partnership number 1, located on the east side of the Cully Broussard, approximately 300 feet north of LA Highway 42. Then there's a public hearing for that and an ordinance for that same item. Reading of ordinance to amend the building department fee schedule, a public hearing for that, and adoption of ordinance for that. Reading of ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code Appendix 5 drainage section 17507, placement of field B1, D2 and section 1750100 definitions to add max chain wall height of 24 inches, to add a definition for chain wall, and to increase the compaction test for commercial properties. The public hearing for that and adoption of ordinance for that same ordinance. Reading of ordinance to revoke a 15-foot servitude running along the eastern property line of Lot 4A1 and Lot 4A2, now Lot 4A2A, both owned by Henry E. Ingram Jr. Public hearing for that and an adoption ordinance for that same ordinance. Reading of ordinance to revoke a 60-foot servitude of passage and a 100 by 100 foot water well cell site servitude running along the western property line of Lot 55, owned by Paul Knapp, and the eastern property line of Lot 56, owned by Steve Hutchinson of the Woodland Shire subdivision property, moved to council via UDC 17405B2A. The public hearing for that and an adoption of ordinance for the same ordinance.
Gentlemen, does that conclude the reading of the agenda?
Yes.
Would you please go ahead and read any comments that you might already have?
He didn't give them to me, Terry. Hold on 1 second.
Sure. Gentlemen, I want to remind you as we get into the meat of this agenda, please give the chair a motion and a second before the discussion so that we can kind of keep things rolling in order. It's a little easier that way outside of the building since we're in this virtual meeting. So if you'll go ahead on each agenda item after it's read, give a motion and a second. Somebody do a motion, somebody do a second. We'll open the floor for discussion at that point. Thank you so much. Senator, go ahead.
This is a public comment on agenda item number 11, section D, E, and F. My name is Diane Baum. I am 2020 chair for the Home Builders Association of Greater Baton Rouge. I wanted to first convey my disappointment in the parish government for not working with our industry and small business owners concerning this building review fee hike. We have over 1,000 businesses and have a network of active community leaders that would have been eager to consult with you on this increase in price. As representation of many small businesses in the parish and the entire home building industry, we do support the fee increase on plan reviews due to an assessment of facts presented. As we were made to understand, this increase is to facilitate expanded services, additional personnel, and comparable rates in regard to permit volume with other adjacent parishes. We want our parish building permit office to work efficiently, and our support of this fee increase is to ensure that there is a smooth process when our citizens get back to work and small businesses open up again to reinvigorate our economy as soon as possible. Thank you for your time. Diane Baum.
Thank you. Are there any others at this time, Senator?
No.
Okay, then would tech IT please put up the screen, and we will be back at 6:30.
All participants are now muted.
that is going on. Again. Sentiment. So we.
Okay, we can hear you, Terry.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're ready to go again. Gentlemen, you have just brought to my attention that the sheriff and Judge Vertigat are present and would like to speak on an item. I would love to extend them the courtesy of moving that item, a couple of items, I believe, up in the agenda. If that meets with all the councilman's approval, I'll just look for your heads to nod like this or a thumb up. Thank you, Joel. And then we'll go. But Mr. President, I hope you don't have any concern about that either.
Absolutely not.
Thank you very much. All right, so Cinnamon, could we go ahead and let's dispense with those two items?
It's going to be three, Terry. It's going to be item M and N for Judge Vertigat's, and then item R for the sheriff.
Okay, so item M, approval of a change order, new courthouse construction, the Lemoyne Company, LLC, to increase the contract time by 38 days. And I welcome the judge and to the room to comment on this item. I'll go ahead and read in as well, because I would suspect that he'll go straight from one item to the other. N is the approval of a change order, new courthouse construction, the Lemoyne Company, LLC, to increase the contract by $191,313,000 for access control and door hardware changes, fire suppression, mechanical and electrical modifications, additions associated with the final room layout changes. Welcome, Judge Vertigat. It's great to see you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Sheriff, I see you there as well. Happy to have you with us. Welcome to virtual Ascension Parish Council meeting. Joel, I'll acknowledge you in a moment, please. Let the gentleman speak, and then if you have a comment, raise your hand for me. Mr. Vertigat, Judge Vertigat?
Yeah, I was going to let Jasper start off and give the explanation, if that's okay. And then, of course, if they have any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer.
Look, we're pretty informal in this setting. Jasper, I didn't even see you there. If you all realized how tiny you were in my screen. I can't. Thank you. I can't hardly identify anybody there.
Madam Chairman and Council, I did distribute an explanation of there are two issues, two change orders actually. One is a 38-day time extension with no money associated. The other is change order number 3, which is a $191,313. I sent an explanation to everyone, and I'm really here to answer any questions you might have about those changes or about that explanation. So
thank you.
Open for questions.
The chair would entertain a motion and a second to approve, and then we'll open for questions.
Motion, Madam Chairman. John Cagnalotti.
Have a motion by Mr. Cagnalotti, second by Mr. Mason, and I think Mr. Robert had a question.
Can't hear you, Joel.
Gonna need to unmute, Joel.
Okay, gotcha. I was going to ask you to not change, but separate the two, because I'm planning to vote differently on both of them. As far as the time allotted and the actual financial changes.
Okay, we'll separate them to vote, absolutely. So the first item that we'll vote on will be on M, which is the time allotted. Are there any questions around the time allotted? Don't see any. Item N is the change order for $191,000 for access control and door hardware. Are there changes on that? Yes, Mr. President.
Maybe I missed it. I'm not sure. Gasper, did you explain that was in the contingency? Do I have that correct? So it's not an addition.
The $191,000 change order here was not intended to come from the project contingency. The project contingency of $600,000 was for unforeseen things that would happen during construction. Right now we have a balance of about $330,000 or $340,000 left in the contingency. And we have about 8 months more on the project to go. What's reflected in the $191,000 are changes to the project requested by the sheriff, the clerk, and the judges. It was always understood that any changes requested by the owner would be funded by additional funds to the project. That being said, any money left in the contingency at the end of the project can be used to offset those costs. We just can't guarantee there's going to be that money left at the end of the project, and at this time we still have 8 months to go. So my recommendation to the committee has been to add additional funds to the project, at least in concept now. We don't literally need the money in the project until the very end of the project, but we know where we'll stand financially. I don't know if that helped in the next explanation.
Mr.
does, and the
Robert.
items that Chairman, if I got one more.
Yes.
So the changes that are being requested, who are funding those changes? Who's responsible to fund those changes?
Well, the memo that I sent suggests which entity requested the change and should fund it. Some are split equally between all the parties involved. Some were requested specifically by the judges, some specifically by the sheriff. Grace Hebert and I and Lemoyne have come up with what we believe is a fair breakout of who should be responsible for what, and that is in this memorandum that was distributed.
Okay, I just wanted to have that clarified for the public. Thank you. That's all I have, Chairman.
Mr. Robert. Unmute, Joel, please.
Something else that I saw in that agenda item was fire suppression. It just puzzles me how fire suppression wouldn't have been in there originally. I mean, why are we doing a change order on that?
Gasper, do you have an answer to Mr. Robert's question?
Yeah, I don't remember the specifics about fire suppression or additional cost. No,
It's on the.
I don't. Well, that's in the summary, but this is a breakdown here. No, I don't, right offhand, I don't remember that issue. If it was anything, it was probably a change or a rerouting of perhaps sprinkler lines and other things. That did have to be done because of some of the changes that were made. I don't think there was any additional fire suppression required. I think it was a matter of some changes made in the plans and in the layout in the building as a result of some of the requested changes. There was adequate fire protection in the original plan. There might have been some changes that had to be made as a result of some changes that were requested.
My comment on this particular item is, we're talking about $191,000 for the door hardware changes, and what else do you have? The mechanical and electrical modifications. I think at this point, I've had taxpayers reaching out to me, I don't agree with having to keep adding more and more to this item. And I know you say we have money on reserve for these particular contingencies, but if we don't use them, we get that money back, correct?
Well, as I said earlier, the money that was to pay for the $191,000 in requested changes needs to come from either the sheriff or the clerk or the judges, at least in concept for now, until the end of the job, until we know whether the contingency, which is part of the original contract, the $600,000 contingency in the project is part of the original contract. It's not extra money. It is part of Lemoyne's contract. We haven't spent that all yet. If we end the job with money left in that, it can offset some of these costs. But if we end the job with no money left in the contingency fund, someone else will have to pay for these costs. Our suggestion as to who pays for what is based upon who requested the changes. And that would either be the clerk, the sheriff, or the judges. And that is
what happens if they have money left? What happens if they have money left in the account whenever it's over?
It comes back to the parish, and it can offset any additional cost. So if we don't spend any more contingency, the parish gets about $340,000 back into the project. That would offset most of these costs. I just can't, at this point, with 8 months left in the project, can't guarantee that money's going to be left there. I'm hopeful that it will, but I can't guarantee that.
Okay.
Any other questions, gentlemen? Mr. Mason.
Mr. Gasper, thank you so much for that information. If you wouldn't mind, just for like reminding me and maybe even letting the public know, could you give us that breakdown on which departments are going to be responsible for these changes, please?
Well, the courthouse committee was comprised of the judges, the sheriff's department, and the clerk of court. Each of those have requested certain changes that are reflected in this memorandum dated May 4th that was distributed to each of you. And it's a narrative, but it also includes the dollars involved and who we suggest. Now, we haven't sat down with Bobby or Jason or Bridget yet to agree to all of this, but it's our recommendation or our suggestion as to how the cost and the responsibilities should be broken out.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Mr. Lawler.
Yes. Is there an opportunity to sit down with all the parties in this to clarify the agreement ahead of time to who's going to pay what on this? Possibly it doesn't have to come out of this contingency fund?
Oh, I'm sorry, what are you asking, Councilman Lawler?
That rather than take the money out of the contingency fund, can we sit down with all the parties that are involved in this that want the changes and have them put up the money right now, as opposed to taking out of the contingency fund? Because with 8 months left, there's an opportunity, I think a very good opportunity, that there are contingencies that we're going to have to pay for. And since these are not unforeseen contingencies, these are more of, Cadillac items, so to say, or different changes we want to make that maybe, I'm not sure if the architect should have seen this before or what the details are with these changes, but maybe we can come to an agreement of that sort instead of taking this out of that contingency fund, number one.
Yeah, well, technically, that's a good idea. The money doesn't come out of the contingency at all yet. We're talking about something that would happen at the end of the project when we do a reconciliation of everything. O'Neill Parrington has drafted a memorandum of understanding that the parties could look at to come to some agreement now as to who pays for what in the end. But at the end of the day, when the project is over, if there's money left in the contingency, again, it's the parish's money. It's not the contractors, it's the parish's money, and it can be used to offset any additional cost. And I wouldn't understand, please, that the changes that were made Grace Abear Curtis did a very good job of putting a plan together. Nevertheless, every entity, when they look at the details as we move through the project, are going to see that some things they'd rather see. I don't think we Cadillac anything on this project. I think the changes that were made for logistics and made for security and made for other very good reasons. There's certainly we didn't have a swimming pool to the third floor, is what I'm saying. You know, the changes that were made were very good changes, and they were necessary changes based upon how the sheriff and the judges and the clerk work their operations. So it couldn't have really been foreseen. Grace Abear, although they did a very good job, couldn't predict everything and how the sheriff or the judges or the clerk would want to run their operations until we got further into it. So I think the changes that were made were necessary and good changes. That's all I can say about that. My recommendation is that at the end of the day, we can come to some agreement now, but at the end of the day, see how much money is left in the contingency, see how much money needs to be funded by the sheriff or the judges or the clerk, and reconcile at the end.
And gentlemen and madam, I wouldn't want to do this 5 times, from now to the end of the project. We're doing it now, there might be another change, there may be another change, and are we going to do this 3 or 4 times, or are we going to wait to the end and take a look at it as in global, so to speak?
Yeah, my concern was that this was something that the architects may have missed, but it doesn't sound like that's what it is. Okay. The other point is this all moot? And I hate to bring up a touchy subject here, but it's my understanding that this change order has already been signed. It was signed on April 6th.
Yeah, that's good. I think that I can blame myself for that. I took the change orders first are reviewed by me and by Grace Abear Curtis, and we recommended approval on this particular change or these 2 particular change orders. There are other change orders that are in the mix that we still have to discuss with the sheriff and the judge and the clerk as to whether we want to go forward with them or not. These were approved by the architect and by me. What my mistake was bringing them, sending them to the President Quintemont and saying, hey, these change orders are approved by us, you need to go ahead and sign them. I guess I missed out on logistically how it should be done, what the protocol really is. I assume it needed to go to the council first for approval. So what we're asking now, I guess, is for the council to ratify President Quintemont's signature.
Well, Gasper, I think that's very kind of you, but you've done this type of work many years. I think you know how the system works. My concern is that there were errors made, and I think this lends to a larger concern overall. And this error was made on April 6th, apparently. It was recorded April 9th. We just found out about it a couple of days ago. I'd like to use this opportunity because I think they justify a need for more oversight. So what I'd like to see is at the next Finance Committee meeting, we begin a process of budgeting and hiring a compliance auditor, like a legislative auditor like they have in the Capitol, that would have full access to all departments and the full support of the administration, but this individual or firm would report to and be directed by the council, and the council would have the sole ability to hire and fire this individual or this firm. We can also hire a firm in this. There have been instances in the past few weeks where errors have occurred that weren't made apparent to the full council in a timely manner, and that's my concern. I think this shows the need to have more oversight. I think it's a very important thing because this is a $190,000 change order that was signed, I wouldn't say illegally, but in contrast to what the law says, it should have been signed. That's a major concern. My question then is, do we have other issues like this? Have we had other documents that were signed that should not have been signed? For this reason, I'm asking Councilman Cagnalotti if on the Finance Committee, if we could put something on the agenda to start the process of hiring a compliance officer of sorts. I think it's very important, and I think we see the need for it right now because I've heard several contradictory reasons why this occurred. And none of them are making sense to me right now. And Gasper, you're I understand, but you're very well versed in how this all works. I don't think you'd make this type of error. And that's my concern, is that we're seeing errors made that have to be rectified, and we need more oversight on what's going on the administrative side. And I yield.
Thank you. Mr. Robert. You need to unmute.
Okay, I got you. Okay. And kind of like what Aaron is saying here, I'm not trying to deny the sheriff or the judges changes they want, but I'd like some more time maybe to sit with them and see if it's part of the contractor's fault or the architect's fault. I mean, it's so easy just to say, okay, another $190,000. I'd like to sit down with the sheriff, maybe sit down with the judge and see if we're getting what we're really supposed to be getting for this. And like Aaron said, he already said there's a couple more change orders we have to talk about, right?
Mr. Ogeron. You're still muted, Corey. Mr. Ogeron, you're still muted. Again? There you go.
That's better? Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
The young lady that speaks over the computer told me I was unmuted, so I just made that assumption relying on her. What is she, Allie or something, whatever. Anyways, following up on Mr. Lawler's recommendations, I'm asking President Quinton to stand behind us with this suggestion of allowing us to expand the transparency, expand the openness, and supporting the notion of our having a quote unquote compliance auditor to assist the council, who all have full-time jobs, to follow up with everything that's taking place within administration. So I'm curious as to whether or not the president would agree to work with us in that manner.
Hold on just a second, Corey. I have some other folks who have comments. Mr. Turner.
Yes, my first question is to Gasper. I guess what Gasper was saying, he said it wasn't a mistake. There was something they expected, or there was just changes that were made by the individuals who was helped design the courthouse. Is that correct?
Yes, please speak. I'm sorry, I was distracted. What was that?
Redirect your question, Counselor.
Gasper, my question was, it wasn't really a mistake. It was something that was added on, that was just added fixtures that need to be, that increased the price, so it wasn't technically a mistake.
Oh, that's right. There were no mistakes made by the architect or the contractor. These are not mistakes that had to be fixed. In fact, as an example, there was a mistake made by the civil engineer sub-consultant to Grace Abear that cost about $6,000. They were required to pay for that themselves. It never even showed up. It won't show up here because it was a mistake they made. We caught and said, no, you're going to pay for that directly. So no, this was not anything to do with a mistake. This was changes that the sheriff's department, the judges, and the clerk all found necessary to the original plan. And it may have added, well, it certainly added materials and labor, and that's what this is all made up of. But no mistakes by the contractor or the architect.
So really no different than if I'm doing a remodel at the house. I wanted a 20 feet remodel and decided to go 25 feet. Is going to have extra costs associated with that, correct?
Yeah, something like that, except it wasn't a matter of adding, like we were talking about earlier, it wasn't Cadillacing the project. It was more like making some changes due to the logistics and the protocols required by the sheriff and the judges that the architect may not have, based the design upon a typical courthouse, but the sheriff here in Ascension and the judges and the clerk may operate things a little bit differently. And as a result of that, as they went through the details, they found some changes they wanted to make. That's as simple as it is.
Okay. And I guess my next question might be directed to Aaron or Gasper. Now, I know Aaron was saying as far as getting a auditor to look over projects, but if we get an auditor, I'm assuming we would have to bid that out to a third-party company. And would the increased costs of adding them to the parish payroll or to the payroll period be offset by any potential savings or not?
If I may.
Yes, you may.
I don't really know. I think there is a potential for that. It's my understanding. I've heard that we have saved $1 million in payroll already. So I think we have room in the budget for this. And a lot of it is very much about good government to make sure that mistakes aren't made. We recently had a contract that was submitted and almost went all the way through that had nothing as it pertained to hourly rates. It was an hourly rate contract, but it had nothing indicating the hourly rates. We can't have slip-ups like that occur. We need to have better oversight as to what's going on from the administrative standpoint. And I don't feel like we have that. I mean, this is something that has been done in other parishes. And I believe it's very important. They do it at a state level also, and they even do it at a federal level. So this is something that I think we can look into the cost of it and see if it's something that we can afford. But from everything I've seen, I firmly believe that we can afford it. It's not just about cost savings. It's about making sure that we're compliant because, Travis, that also involves compliance with state and federal grants and loans. And a mistake that is made can eliminate us from the ability to obtain repayment, such in this COVID-19 situation, or the inability to obtain a grant. So I just want to make sure we're doing everything right, and also that we get information timely. Like I said, this incident occurred on April 6th. It was recorded with the clerk of court April 9th, and we didn't hear about it until a couple of days ago. That's not acceptable to me. We should be finding out about this kind of thing right away to rectify the situation. You know, Travis, may I remind you, we had a meeting on April 16th, and that would have been an opportunity to learn about this situation. Thank you.
I want to comment, and then, Mr. President, I'll certainly notice that you want to make a comment. I want to comment that all last year, under previous administration, it was a personal request of mine that this type of individual be hired. We had seen not this exact same situation, but different situations come up from time to time where, I mean, I can go back as many years ago to a situation where Ascension Parish Government Council passed a law. At some point, it was just decided, oh, we're just not going to enforce that. And, you know, that was not acceptable. And so it's been a concern of mine, and so I would certainly support that. I will say that the conversations that I've had with John Diaz, and I believe that he was reflecting the president's interest in the same kind of person. So I'd like to see us at least have it on an agenda in finance and have a robust discussion about it. Since it was not an agenda item here, I think that too much further discussion about it might not have given the public an opportunity to weigh in. So I'd like to see us consider that on the next finance agenda, and I'll yield now to the parish president.
Thank you, Chairwoman. This was signed under the executive order at the time. I have the authority to do so, but I'd like to ask legal if I did have the authority to sign it. Let's make sure that everything's legal first.
Well, you had the authority to act unless it was related to COVID-19. That was not an executive matter, but it can always be ratified because this is related to executive.
Okay, so it wasn't legal, then I signed it. Is that correct?
Well, it's not illegal. It can be ratified. It's not an illegal act. I'm just saying it didn't follow the process. I never saw this until later.
Talked about this when Gasper brought it up, and we talked about signing documents and the authority to do so. I was under the impression that judges were going to pay for their changes and everything else was going to pay. And because we didn't have council meetings at the time, this was a time-sensitive issue. And I didn't just sign it so that I could get something away for the judges or the sheriff. So, I mean, it wasn't the case. It wasn't the intention or the case. And so in the spirit of transparency, what I would like to ask Councilman Lawler and Councilman Ogeron is I'd like to do a forensic audit back to 2015. If we're going to be transparent, let's be transparent. So let's do a forensic audit back to 2015 so that we can ensure that anything is done incorrectly or whatever circumstance that we may be feeling the ills of today are brought to light. So I want to encourage and challenge y'all to see if y'all have your cooperation in doing that forensic audit back to 2015.
Mr. Lawler, Mr.
Yeah, I certainly agree that I believe that if we hire somebody to do that, they can also look back. I wouldn't have a problem with that. I'm not sure. I guess what the cost of that would be, but I'd be more than happy to put that in the budget. That'd be fine.
Mr. Ogeron? You're muted, Mr. Ogeron.
Mr. President, I think that's a wonderful idea. I think we have a meeting of the minds here. I think if we can agree to that compliance officer and have the compliance officer conduct that audit back to 2015 or even earlier, I would fully support both. So thank you for that suggestion.
And so would the chair. Mr. Cagnolati, will you proceed to do that on your agenda, please? I'd like to move on. We need a vote at this, thank you, Mr. Cagnolati. We need a vote at this time on agenda item M, which is the 38-day addition. Does anyone object? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item N, which was the $191,000. Are there any objections to the ratification of the already signed order? Mr. Robert objects. Would you please do a roll call, Madam Secretary?
Councilman Thomas.
Everyone will need to unmute, please, to vote.
Councilman Thomas.
Am I mute?
You're good. Just need to vote.
Yeah.
Is that a yes, Mr. Councilman?
Yeah, for it.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Robert.
No.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Councilman Orgeron. Councilman Orgeron.
Yes. I'm off.
Councilman Lambert.
Yes.
Councilman Melanson.
Yes.
Councilman Lawler.
Yes.
Councilman Wagasback.
Yes.
Councilman Cagnolati.
Yes.
Councilman Mason.
Yes.
Chairwoman Casso.
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen, for the robust discussion. Now, there is a third item that the sheriff is here to lend his expertise to. Cinnamon, give me the number on that one, please.
It's R.
Thank you. Approval of an intergovernmental agreement by and between Ascension Parish Government and the Ascension Parish Sheriff's Office to share cost of expansion between the parish, which shall pay an additional $50,000 for a total of $650,000, and the Sheriff's Office, which shall pay an additional $16,000 for a total of $96,000 to the cost of the expansion to dorms currently occupied by female prisoners. I know that that the sheriff is present, and but that Mr. Diaz put this on the agenda. The sheriff, I welcome your. I can't see you over there when you move that far away from me, but welcome to the council.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So if I could, gentlemen, Madam, if I could just give you a little bit of a background. So in February of 2019, we looked hard at this project. This project was twofold. Number one was expanding the female dorm of the Ascension Parish Jail. It also happens to be a female dorm in the oldest part of the jail, where we were experiencing some pretty serious plumbing issues at the jail. We was also starting to outsource our females to Madison Parish at $23 a day. Our jail can hold 48 females. That's how many beds we have for females. And we were consistently over the 50, 55, 58 female area, and we were sending the overage to Madison Parish, so to speak, and you were paying them, I think, last year over $50,000 to house those females. I thought it was a good idea, and I think Parish President and Parish Council, as much as you knew about the project, thought it would probably be a good idea to, I guess, kill two birds with one stone. While we were doing a serious remodel to fix plumbing, we should open up that dormitory and add some square footage to it, to add some beds to it, so we can bring those females back to Ascension Parish where they should be and increase our bed capacity at the jail so we wouldn't be overcrowded. Now, I know by statute the sheriff is the keeper of the jail, and in Louisiana, which is always mighty unique, that the parish government shall maintain a safe and sufficient jail. And that's the way it has been for quite a while. I see somebody waving a hand. I don't know if I should stop now.
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay. All right. Sorry, Joe. So obviously I want to help with this project, and I agreed early on to pay all architectural fees, which was about $63,000, which was done. So we had the layout, we have the architectural fees in hand. The architects thought it would be around $680,000 project. I think parish government budgeted $600,000 for it. And the reason you did that, maybe just because of tight budget constraints, and I agreed to pick up the other 80. So not only did I do the 63, I pick up the other 80. Well, lo and behold, as things go along, the lowest bid came in at, what, $740. So it's over what we intended, and I again agree to pay another $16,000 towards that if parish government would agree to kick in $50,000. Now, if we do that project, we bring the females back, we increase our population at the jail. So you say you have that savings. But either way, whether we do it or not, you're getting ready to spend a lot of money on plumbing at that jail. And I think your maintenance guys will tell you a lot about that. So here's where I am doing a lot of car sharing, and hopefully I explained it well enough, and I certainly will answer any questions that you may have about that project. I wish you would have come in at 680, but unfortunately with the price, the way things are, it's at, what, 746 or something like that.
Thank you, Sheriff, very much. Mr. Robert.
I'll make a motion for approval.
A second.
I have a motion by Mr. Robert, a second by Mr. Cagnolati to approve. Do we have any other questions? Okay, Mr. Melanson.
Sheriff, whenever we run out of room for our women over there, isn't it pretty costly for us to have to pay for them to go somewhere else out of it?
Yes, sir. So it costs you $23.64 a day to house a adult female offender in another parish. So there's two problems. Plus, I mean, that adds up fairly quick, right? And we've sent up to 10 females to another parish. But only Madison Parish is giving us some relief now. So not only is it you paying a lot, it's hard to find other parishes that will hold your offenders. So it's a challenge. And let me tell you what another challenge is being that far away from Ascension Parish, going and get them back and forth for court, and you paying for that transportation, that mileage for that transportation, them being close to family, them being close to the defense attorneys, them being close to the courtrooms. It's a tough challenge, and we've been doing it now for over a year. I'm thinking we have a great opportunity to get rid of that plumbing issue in that section of the jail, and at the same time increase our female population, and that female population should last us into the foreseeable future. Now, the good news is, when y'all built the jail and the expansion in 2009, we're still doing very well with male population as far as not being overcrowded. So don't look for me to come to you anytime soon to say I need more beds for males. We seem to be managing that population very, very well. It's just the females that are giving us some challenges right now.
So roughly $2,400 a night is what it costs us to send a female outside the parish.
Yeah, I think you paying for it, so you can get the numbers from finance. I know it's well over $50,000 in 2019.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Mr. Mason.
Thank you, Sheriff, for coming in and explaining this to us. You may have gone over this, and if I missed it, I apologize. About how many dorms for the women is this going to add, this expansion?
Yeah, so we're going from 48 to 64. My total capacity today is 48. We'll go to 64. And we should be able to manage that for quite a while.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sheriff.
Mr. Ogeron.
Sheriff, has anyone done a calculation to see how long we get a positive return on this investment? I'm thinking if we're going to be putting in another 60, is it a year before we make that money back, or?
Well, it's kind of hard to do the calculation, especially now. And another good reason to do it now is our female population is actually down a little bit because of the situation that we're in. So if you can calculate that we were sending 8 to 10 to Madison, you can do the calculation yourself at 23, what I said, right. 23 what? 2364 a day. But again, a lot of that, I don't know if half of that is going for the expansion. The other half may very well be going to the plumbing repairs that you got to do either way, because it is a real challenge and a real issue at the jail right now. And that's the part of the jail, Corey, that was built in 1975. That's the oldest part of the jail, what we would call our first generation design jail.
Well, just to let you know, Sheriff, I just pulled out my trusty Tandy calculator, and 250 days, so in less than a year, we'll recoup that money by not sending the ladies over to another parish. So I think that's a good investment.
Thank you for grabbing that calculator. So I knew it seemed like a good thing for us to do it at this time.
Yeah. Appreciate it, Sheriff. Thank you much.
Thank you. Councilman Turner.
Yes, thank you, Sheriff, for giving that presentation to us. But, I do a little defense work every now and again. And I can say just as far as, with a client that's going to be held in another parish with a case here, that does create a great burden on that person meeting with the client, having time preparing for court and getting ready. Then you're also going to have extra expenses that go to the sheriff's office if they can't get the client back for a specific court date. And then they have to bring them back again when things could have been resolved earlier. So sometimes they end up having to bring them to court multiple times. I have multiple blank trips. And I think that's going to save the parish and the sheriff a lot of money in the long run with having more availability in the jailhouse for the female inmates. I know a lot of times we're in court, they're having to let out females just because of due expense. They don't have any room for them in the jail, and they have to let them out on bonds, lower bonds, and some of them may not really need to be allowed out at that point.
Excellent point, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Mr. Diaz, this was your item on the agenda. Do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Yes, I just wanted to thank the sheriff for stepping up. This is 100% our responsibility legally, fiduciary, and to step up and constantly kind of meet us halfway at every step. I really appreciate it. And once again, as Corey said, this pays for itself. And I remember from our transition days, where the warden told me the fastest growing population in the parish prison is females. And so we need to build capacity.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, I want to remind you all that to lower your hands if you've indicated them to me electronically, please lower them once you have been called upon. And I honestly don't mind a little, just a raise of the hand over onto the side so that I make sure I see you. I prefer you don't put it in front of your face. And I would also ask you not to raise your hands during the time that our presenters are speaking. Because it causes them a little bit of confusion because they're not where they can see you as well. So we had a motion and a second. And are there any objections to this project? Hearing none, that motion passes.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I appreciate your support, and I look forward to getting this project started.
Thank you, Sheriff. I look forward to visiting that section when it's available for us to see it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sheriff.
And that would be as a guest and not an inmate, right, Ms. Jasper?
Absolutely. I don't
Just a
want to
visit.
Just a visit. But I do want to ask all the women out there in Ascension Parish, please behave yourself. All right, let's go on now. We are finally to item 5. And Cinnamon, don't let me repeat the ones that we've already done. Item 5, presentations. A proclamation to proclaim Hurricane Preparedness Week in Ascension Parish. Mr. President.
Hurricane season begins June 1st, less than a month away. I want to urge everyone to plan ahead to mitigate the negative effects of storms. Please follow our Facebook page for ways to prepare yourself and your home and for a potential hurricane. At this time, I will read the proclamation for May 3rd through the 9th, 2020, as Hurricane Preparedness Week in Ascension Parish. Louisiana is one of the leading states for overall damage from hurricanes, and Ascension Parish has suffered much damage through the years. Tropical storms can claim lives and destroy property through storm surge, destructive winds, flooding, tornadoes, landslides, and even weaker tropical storms can also cause severe damage. The Ascension Parish Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness and the parish elected officials work together with the National Weather Service before and during hurricane or tropical storms to reduce the possible damages posed to lives and property, and to provide an effective response to these storms. Hurricane season in the Atlantic begins June 1st. Ascension Parish government encourages all residents and property owners to plan and prepare for hurricanes and other tropical systems. To get ready for hurricane season, experts recommend that people review their emergency plans and update their insurance policies to confirm they include coverage for accidental damage, natural disasters, and flooding. Experts also recommend that people maintain emergency supply kits with enough non-perishable food and water to last at least 3 to 7 days. Arrangements for the care of your pets, and should learn the evacuation routes and be prepared to comply with local authorities when asked to evacuate. Each household should identify an out-of-state friend or tell them their emergency plan so that all family members have a point of contact during a disaster in case communication becomes difficult. Now, I, Clint Quinton, President of the Parish of Ascension, State of Louisiana, by the virtue of the authority vested in me, do hereby proclaim May 3rd through 9th, 2020, as Hurricane Preparedness Week in Ascension Parish, and call upon our citizens and interested groups to observe this week with appropriate activities and to be diligent and prepare for hurricanes and tropical systems.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. We do encourage the folks to listen to and adhere to those things stated in the proclamation. Item number 6, the parish president's report.
At the May 5th Unified Command Group teleconference of all of Ascension Parish leaders, I made a surprise but well-received announcement. I officially promoted Rachel Wilkinson to the Director of Ascension Parish Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness, and I couldn't be more confident with my choice. Rachel Wilkinson has been with OSEP in various capacities since 2008 and was named Assistant Director in 2013. She has been serving as the Acting Director since 2019. Rachel holds a bachelor's degree from the Nichols State University. She graduated from the Governor's Office of Homeland Security Emergency Preparedness Command College in 2011 and received management certification from the Louisiana Emergency Preparedness Association and has been repeatedly recognized for her management of numerous emergency situations. Rachel and her team have been the mainstay to the administration dealing with the COVID-19 emergency. From coordinating the unified command group calls to staying in constant contact with our local and state agencies, Rachel has led the way for our parish to get detailed information and questions answered. Rachel Wilkinson also spearheaded obtaining the reusable masks that were donated by the Haynes Company and coordinated with local agencies to get them distributed to the parish residents. She also successfully, in under a week, was able to open the Ascension Parish COVID-19 testing site in Donaldsonville. So we just want to thank Rachel Wilkinson. As far as the mask distribution, the parish has received 49,060 cotton face masks. Again, that were donated by Haynes and distributed by GOSEP to all parishes based on population. The masks were then distributed by Ascension's OSEP to all area fire departments and the city mayors, again, based on population. The blood drive. The blood bank called and said they were drastically short of blood. And as usual, Ascension Parish employees rose to the occasion and donated almost 20 pints of blood. The Donaldsonville testing site. Ascension Parish worked with the Governor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness and the Louisiana National Guard to open drive-through testing site for the people looking to be tested for COVID-19. We worked with the Governor's Office of National Guard to determine the best site for the test, and we decided the West Bank of Ascension was the right choice. At that point, the administration and the Ascension Parish Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness worked with the state and federal officials to secure the test and the manpower to administer them. These tests are free. The people will administer their own tests inside their vehicles. These tests are self-swabbing Quest tests, and they are distributed by members of the Louisiana National Guard. The testing site opened April 27th at the Donaldsonville Primary School at 38210 Louisiana Highway 3089 in Donaldsonville. To date, the testing site has successfully administered 1,245 tests. Food banks. Over the past few weeks, the Louisiana Army of National Guard and the Baton Rouge Food Bank has provided food distribution on both the east and west banks of the parish. Without the help of the Ascension Parish Sheriff's Office, Ascension Parish School Board, Gonzales Police Department, Army National Guard, the Baton Rouge Food Bank, OSEP Director Rachel Wilkinson, and my administrative staff, especially Kim Bro and David Weil, this would have not been possible. Because of everyone's efforts, we were able to serve 2,300 households with food. The food that has been given out during COVID-19 has more than doubled. Employees back to work. Since the beginning of the COVID-19 emergency, the parish government has been operating on a very limited amount of staff. This past Monday, May 4th, I decided to bring back more of our staff. Each department came up with a staffing plan that allowed them to provide services to the public while maintaining social distancing to the workplace. Many departments are working Team A in the office this week and then Team B in the office next week. As we continue to move forward and look back, all of our staff have been incredibly patient, understanding, and flexible as the changes occur sometimes day to day, and sometimes hour to hour. Randy Watts, our HR director, has been sending out daily reminders to ensure our staff are taking all the safety precautions to keep everyone healthy. At this time, our building remains closed to the public. However, we have been able to provide all of our service remotely to our residents. And this coming Monday, we'll begin to reopen our park facilities, but restrooms, playground equipment will remain closed to the public per the governor's orders. So dealing with the park reopening. In an effort to maintain consistent voice with respect to reopening of recreational facilities, the City of Gonzales, Parish of Ascension, have been working in cooperation to develop a plan moving forward, and we hopefully begin to open our community back up. On May 18th, we will open the parks back up to the patrons for activities that can safely adhere to the social distancing standards, walking, fishing, and other group-based activities. The full details of the reopening schedule is posted on our website and Facebook page. Please keep in mind that these contingent upon the Louisiana Governor's stay-at-home order ending May 15, 2020 are subject to change depending upon additional state and federal guidelines. We will also be contacting Mayor Donaldsonville to work in cohort with him as opening our recreation facilities on the West Bank. In closing, I'd like to let everyone know that our administration is looking forward to regaining some sense of normalcy. We have been meeting virtual with our department heads to review policies and procedures. We're hopefully see the return of the committee meetings and look forward to showing each committee the items we have been hard at work on during the past 8 weeks. Finally, I want to thank my staff who has continued to go above and beyond to help this parish operating for our residents. That's all I got, Terry. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Item number 7, committee recommendations. A, Personnel Committee appointments. Chairman Michael Mason.
Thank you, Chairwoman. On the Personnel Committee met on February 18th of 2020 and interviews were conducted, and the following recommendation for the Board of Adjustments was made. We would like to have a new appointment for Jake Joffrion.
The chair would entertain a motion. Have a motion by Mr. Cagnolati.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ogeron. Are there any objections? Hearing none, Mr. Joffrion is appointed. Item number 2.
Yes, ma'am. After that, we have, we interviewed individuals for Planning and Zoning Commission. The recommendations are ranked in order for the 4 openings. The first position, we are recommending Krista Madare, a new appointment for a 2-year term.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion by was that Coach Thomas, and a second by Mr. Roback? Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking down to write down her name. Mr. Ogeron had the motion, Mr. Robert had the second of Ms. Madare for this 2-year appointment to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Are there any objections? Hearing none, Ms. Madare is appointed.
All right, our second recommendation for Planning and Zoning is Julio Dumas, reappointment for a 2-year term.
I make a motion to reject.
I have a motion by Mr. Ogeron and a second by Mr. Thomas to approve Mr. Dumas. Are there any objections? There'll be a roll call vote.
Councilman Thomas.
Yes, Julio.
Okay. Can I make a comment?
You certainly may. I'm sorry.
Yeah, before we vote. Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to mention why I'm not voting to reappoint Julio for the position. I mean, he has never denied a subdivision plat. The only subdivision plats that were denied during his tenure, he was absent. He didn't even go to them because he knew they weren't getting the votes. I don't think that's the type of person that we need in this parish. Obviously,
Mr. Robert, I would prefer that you not attack someone's character.
Yes, ma'am. I apologize. But what I was saying is, I feel like the parish does not want to continue to approve everything and all these subdivisions. So I would prefer to get someone that didn't have the record of approval all the way across the board.
Thank you. Anyone else with any other comments? So the vote will continue. Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Yes. Go ahead, Senator.
Councilman Robert.
No.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Councilman Orgeron.
Yes.
Councilman Lambert.
Yes.
Councilman Melanson.
No.
Councilman Lawler.
Yes.
Councilman Wagisback.
Yes.
Councilman Cagnolati.
Yes.
Councilman Mason.
Yes.
Chairwoman Casso.
Yes. Mr. Dumas is appointed.
All right. Our next recommendation for Planning and Zoning was Shannon Hutchings, a new appointment for 2 years.
Motion, Madam Chairman.
Second.
John.
Have a motion by Mr. Cagnolati, a second by Mr. Ogeron to appoint Shannon Hutchins. Are there any comments? Madam, are there any objections? Hearing none, Ms. Hutchins is appointed.
And our final recommendation for Planning and Zoning is Mr. Aaron Chasson Jr., a reappointment for 2 years.
Motion. Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Lawler, a second by Mr. Cagnolati, and Mr. Chasson. Are there any comments? Are there any objections? Hearing none, Mr. Chasson is appointed.
And before I make my final recommendation, I do want to thank my personnel committee, Mr. John Cagnolati, Mr. Corey Ogeron, Coach Alvin Thomas, and Dow Wagisback. They all have been helping a lot with this, and these recommendations were not easy. There was a lot of people that we interviewed, so I appreciate them and their time. Our final one is recommendation for Fire Protection District number 2. We would like to reappoint David LeBlanc for 2 years.
Motion, Madam Chairman.
Have a motion by Mr. Cagnolati, a second by Mr. Melanson to appoint Mr. LeBlanc. Are there any comments? Any objections? Hearing none, Mr. LeBlanc is appointed. Yes, Mr. Cagnolati.
Madam Chair, if you would allow me just a minute,
Certainly.
I second
Chairman Mason's applause for the cemetery, and I think we all agree, all the personnel committee members will agree. We're getting a very, very high level of quality people that are applying for these commissions and boards, and we encourage them, if they're not selected for a particular board, to continue to apply, because we need quality people to serve on these boards and commissions. And I'm grateful to the citizens of Ascension Parish for offering their volunteer time to do that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Cagnalotti, and I support that. Mr. Mawson.
Oh yeah, I'd just like to express my excitement for finally having some female presidents on P&Z. So I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you for noticing. I'm thrilled too. Yes, all right. So moving along to general business. Item A, approval of a contract for implementation of server maintenance for Fire Protection District 3, maintenance and IT support for computer servers and software systems.
Motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Michael Mason.
Second.
Second by Mr. Cagnalotti. Are there any questions? Chief Carpenter is present if anyone has any questions of him.
Thank you for your service, Chief.
Thank y'all.
Okay, great to see you.
Good to see you too, Mr.
Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item 8B, approval of the lowest responsive bid for precast reinforced box culverts. Design, Precast and Pipe, Inc., Devin Russ from purchasing.
Motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Dempsey Lambert.
Second.
A second by who?
Mason.
Mr. Michael. Don't be looking the other way, Michael.
I'm sorry.
I have a motion by Mr. Lambert, a second by Mr. Mason. Are there any questions? Doesn't appear that there are any. Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item 8C, approval of a request for proposal for scrap metal recycling for the Department of Public Works. Ron Savoy.
Motion.
Have a motion by Mr. Melanson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Robert. Are there any questions? Mr. Ogeron?
Is Mr. Savoy present to answer questions?
He can be. There he is.
Great.
Hi, Ron. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Hi, good afternoon, Council Chairwoman. Yes, we're asking for approval of the highest ranked proposal for scrap metal and recycling services.
Mr. Ogeron had a question.
I was curious as to whether or not this was a type of item that needed to go out for bid, or are we? How are we making a decision on which agency, which firm is going to provide that service for us?
We did go out for a request for proposals, and attached in the packet is the score sheets. We actually only received one proposal, but it was advertised on Central Auction Bidding, the Gonzales Weekly, and the Advocate through our normal bid process. So it was advertised, it was publicly put out, and we did have 200 views of the proposal advertised, but all we had was one proposal. But we are very confident in this company. They're local, and we will have a great tool with this product in the future, and it'll be utilized across the parish. And when we dispose of metal or get byproducts in the parish, instead of bringing it to DPW, with this service, we'll be able to bring it directly to the landfill and be paid for these products, and we'll be making money on this product. We'll increase our services in recycling and our hazardous waste events. When we have that, we can get the scrap metal from that and get credit for that. So this is going to be a great tool that we have not had in our arsenal in the past.
Right. And did their bid come within the parameters that you were expecting?
Yes.
Fantastic. Listen, thanks. Good work on this one.
Thank you.
Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item 8D, approval of contract for professional medical services for inmates at the Ascension Parish Jail. Ty Gotro is present tonight. The contract is $49,500. It was proposed by Christy Burnett at the health unit, but Ty wanted to be with us, and we are excited to have both Ty and Christy with us tonight. Thank you both for the wonderful work you're doing on the front lines of this battle in our jail and around our community with COVID-19. We applaud you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Second that motion.
So I need a motion and a second. Have a
Motion.
motion by Mr. Cagnolati, second by Mr. Thomas. Ty, welcome to the council, virtual council meeting.
Ma'am. Thank you.
Would everyone please mute their mics so that... Thank you. All right, Ty, I understand you wanted to give us a brief update.
Yes, my name's Ty Gotro. I'm born here in Ascension Parish. My dad was down on my mother's Gale. 4 brothers. We all went through the education system here. I've been working as a nurse practitioner since 2005. Worked as a nurse prior to that since 1982. Did 8 years, 9 months in the U.S. Army Reserve. That's how I became a nurse, and just progressed from there. Now, with regards to the prison, I've been providing the healthcare services there at the prison for approximately 13 years. I think we've done a good job. We've had 3 deaths in the prison in that time frame. That's better than you're going to get in most prisons around this area. And you do a good job, and I'd like to continue to do that.
Ty, I'm going to tell you, I'm honored to have a Ascension Parish native working with us in that capacity. I applaud your service, and certainly I think they'll tell you in the agenda meeting, I was trying to figure out why you would do it for $49,500, but since you want to. So we have I think we already have a motion and a second. Are there any questions of Mr. Gotro?
One thing I'd like to say about the COVID is that we've been able to keep it out of the jail. We have an isolation program where they isolated a cell for 14 days, and they moved to another cell for 14 days, and then a third cell for 14 days. So that's 3 14-day periods that we monitor to make sure there's no symptoms, and we've been successful thus far.
Congratulations on that. Thank you very much. I know that is not true around the country. Once again, our applause for that. Mr. Robert.
And I'm just going to wing it and say we haven't had any problems with the prisoners going out in public, spreading the COVID-19.
Certainly not. Any other comments, questions? Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Ty, thank you so much for taking your time tonight to come and be here with us. Christy, great to see you too. Thank you for keeping us safe. Stay well.
Yes, thank you.
Item 8E, approval of the contract renewal with Dr. Lisa Bailey, DDS, to perform necessary dental and professional services to the Ascension Parish Jail inmates to include dental exams, extractions, and x-rays. Christy.
Motion.
I have a motion by, who was the motion by? I have a motion by Mr. Robert, second by Mr. Cagnolati. Are there any questions? Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Christy. Item 8F, approval of the lowest responsive bid for the installation of emergency generators, transfer switches, and fuel tanks in various locations in Ascension Parish. Department of Public Utilities, Katie Ann Renovations. Is Dean Thompson available as the project manager? Yes, there he is. Hi, Dean. Great to see you.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm wonderful, thank you. Does anyone, the chair would entertain a motion and a second, and then questions. I have a motion by, who was the motion? Mr. Mason?
Yes, ma'am.
Second by Mr. Cagnalotti, and now questions. Mr. Wagasback.
Yeah, thank you. So I looked through the documentation on this particular item. Is there any explanation? I mean, so I see it's 5 generators. It says in various places. I mean, I'd like to, is this something we're improving? Is this something where we're upgrading? Or could we give some specifics about what this project is about?
These is actually new installations for emergency support to these lift stations and treatment plants. Whenever they lose power, they'll have generator backups in order to power them so that we don't involve sewer situations like we've had in the past. That answers your question.
Certainly. Go ahead, Dow.
No, so yeah, I guess you kind of answered. I was just going to ask, so when you say issues in the past, so is this something where we've seen how I'm trying to say this, is it, if we have electricity out for a long time, we've seen sewer issues? I mean, is this something that happens a couple times a year? Is this something that happens very often, or just during hurricanes? Just some specifics about that.
I do not have that background information. I mean, it was a FEMA project through a FEMA grant that was done through. So you could probably talk to Ms. Martha to get more of the background on it.
Any other questions, Dow? I see all of you gentlemen. I just can't call on you all at once.
Yeah, I'm good. You can go ahead and go. Yeah.
All right, Mr.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Is this grant money? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And are these portable generators, or they're only going to certain locations?
Only one of them's portable. The other ones will be mounted at the sites.
Do we know what sites?
Gidger Street, the 4-H building in Lamar Dixon, Debbie Street, and there's one other one. I don't remember which one it is, but it's 5 locations total.
Is this something we should be doing at all of our sewer stations?
There you go. That's it.
Dean, is this, in your opinion, I don't know if you're qualified, but is this something that we need in all of our sewer systems, and would this solve the problems?
Well, as far as I know, at this point in time when this was done, that was the stations that had needed it. I know there is 2 other grants that they're looking at for some other applications for generators for emergency services. Again, that'd be a Miss Martha question. She kind of handles the grants part of it. I only get it once it becomes a project. So the front end's done through the grant department.
I understand. My concern is, it seems like, I think we have 51 sewer plants throughout the parish, and we're only doing this for some of them. It seems like the cost could be exorbitant to do that at all of our plants. And is this needed at all of our plants, Dean, as far as you know?
I can't answer that. I don't know. I don't have that background information. I'd go to the utilities department, the grant department, to find out that information.
Okay, well, I won't pressure you anymore. I apologize. I'm glad we're getting this done in some locations. I think we really need to look at the cost, if it's feasible to do this at every location. If not, look at other alternatives, because I think this goes to the ultimate cost of sewer in the parish. This is a cost that's borne by every taxpayer, but it's servicing a couple locations. But thank you very much, Dean. Great job.
Mr. Lawson.
I'm sorry, Chairwoman. Aaron and Al asked the questions I had. I'll lower my hand.
All right, Mr. Ogeron.
Thank you, Chairwoman. This is the first that I'm hearing of the necessity to utilize generators at some of our sewer treatment facilities. I believe this is a sort of an item that should have been brought forward to the Utilities Committee so that we could answer some of the questions that Dal and Aaron asked of Dean. I'm remiss to go forward with this, and I would move that we put this item back to utilities, allowing us the opportunity to vet the options of whether or not we want 5 portable generators that could be transported where needed, as opposed to 1 portable and 4 standard, whether or not we can move for further grant money to push this to more facilities.
Mr. Ogeron, I think this may have been something, I'm not correct, I may not be right about this, but I think this goes back far before.
Before me?
Absolutely. I mean, this kind of grant money doesn't come down in 3 months. So I think that this is something that we have been working on from the previous years. And so I would hope that under those circumstances, you would allow this one to move forward. I certainly think it's something that should be discussed in utilities relative to any grants going forward. You can think about that. Mr. Robert.
Are any of these facilities that are receiving the generators on the West Bank?
No. Not on this current project, no.
I'd like to see something on both sides of the river here. I feel like they would need something over there also.
Mr. Lawler? Unmute, please.
I pulled a Robert. I understand the concerns of Councilman Robert and Councilman Ogeron, but I also understand the concerns of Chairwoman Castro. I think this is something that has to move forward now, as it is grant money. This is not our money. I definitely want to move it forward. I guess my statements are more that, hey, let's look wider, and we do have other grants that we're looking at, but this is also something that this is money that's going into short-term solutions when a long-term solution is completing the sewer projects down 73 and 42, where a lot of this action is occurring. That was my point in that. But I really do believe this needs to go forward. I hope I didn't mislead anybody on that point. So I do certainly move that. I think we've already got the motion that it move forward.
Thank you so much. Mr. Thomas. Coach, did you have something you wanted to say?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought I'd seen your hand go up. Mr. Cagnolati.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Aaron and them are right on point here. I think the grant was done a long time ago, and it's probably specific to these locations. But I agree that we need to look to the future, and maybe multiple portable generators will work if we can standardize the electrical hookups in all these stations, lift stations, et cetera. And that rather than have a fixed generator down the road, we can have access to a number of portable generators that can be brought to any site and serve the purpose. That'll be all.
Thank you so much. I'm going to take the liberty. I think I see Miss Martha. If you had any idea how small you are all in that room, I think that's Martha in there. Martha, do you have anything you want to add to this that might help us to better understand this project?
This project started in 2018. There were multiple sites that were done. Through elimination, there was several assessments. There was stuff on the West Bank. The site that we had picked out was the DPW. The generator would have been taller than the building itself due to the elevations. So we are working around that, but it is, they're selecting these and assessing them all. And Mr. Dean's done a good job. He's just making the project go forward. But the selection of that was done a year ago.
Thank you very much.
I can elaborate on it if you want, but basically, these have been vetted. They've been through FEMA. They should move forward.
Thank you, Martha. Mr. Ogeron.
Miss Martha, is there any reason why we can't purchase 5 portable generators that could be used at the various locations and moved if necessary?
And they do have portable generators, but at these sites, the reason why they went to stationary was to make sure that these things were there permanently. They were going to be tested, and it was in the best interest of putting a generator. The parish has portable generators through other grants that go to specific buildings for that type of thing, but the utilities department, through their engineering, felt that this was how each one of these should be done.
Thank you very much, Martha. Shall I have a motion and a second? I think Mr. Ogeron made a motion that we defer on this. Do I have a second for that as a substitute motion?
I retract that motion, Councilwoman.
Thank you so much. You're about to promote me. So that has been withdrawn. I have a motion and a second. Are there any further questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item 8, this thing's getting awfully small. Item 8, F. Nope, excuse me, G. Approval of change order number 1 for lighting replacement at Jackie Robinson Park, FY 2019, Parish of Ascension project number PM 1907001 to access the site and mobilize heavy equipment, $2,276.19. ADG Engineering, Dean Thomason, manager.
I'll make a motion.
Have a motion by Mr. Robert, second by Mr. Cagnolati. Have a question by Mr. Lawler.
Yeah, I know this is a very small amount of money, but why do we need a change order for them to access the site? I mean, that seems like that should have been part of the project.
Due to the weather and the amount of rain that we were having at the time that they were executing the project, and to keep from damaging the field, they asked to be allowed to use crane mats in order to walk their machine in. And so we discussed it with the Recreation Department, and they agreed to pay the portion of the mats in order not to damage the field and to continue the project.
Great answer, and no problems. Just wanted to know. Thank you.
Any other questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item 8H, approval of a certificate of substantial completion for the lighting replacement project at Jackie Robinson Park, FY 2019, project number PM 1907001.
Motion, Madam Chairman.
I have a motion by Mr. Cagnolati.
Second.
Second by Mr. Turner. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item I, approval of change order number 2, Hope Villa Pump Station replacement, PM 1901-008, $4,944.31 for relocating the existing pump from the Debbie Street Pump Station to Smith Road Pump Station. Dean.
Motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Mason.
Second.
Second by Mr. Cagnolati. Any questions? Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. K, resolution to authorize parish president, J, approval of substantial completion for the re-roofing of Ascension Parish Jail project contract number PM 1902-002.
Motion.
Motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Councilman Mason, second by Councilman Thomas. Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item K, resolution to authorize Parish President Clint Quintmall to enter into and execute on behalf of the parish a contractor contracts with the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development, being state project number H010960, federal aid project number H01960 Louisiana Highway 30 roundabouts at Tanger Mall and I-10, Ascension Parish. Oh, I'm so glad to see this. Are there? I have a motion by Councilman Cagnolati, a second by Councilman Lawler. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item number I. Renewal of a professional services contract for engineering review agency services not to exceed $350,000. CSRS Incorporated, Jerome Fournier. Is Jerome present tonight? Hi, Jerome.
Hello.
Good to see you, sir.
Thank you.
So,
what a presentation.
Let's, the chair would entertain a motion and a second to approve, and then we'll move forward with discussion.
Motion, Madam Chairman.
Have a motion by Councilman Cagnolati, second by Councilman Thomas. Any, do you want to make comment on this project, Jerome?
No, I'd just like to say that CSRS provides engineering review services for the parish with a professional staff of registered engineers who are experts in land development, traffic analysis, drainage analysis, and other engineering specialties. The overwhelming cost of the ERA portion of the contract is paid through fees that we collect from the development community. So basically it's self-supporting and for the most part. Their services continue from the pre-application process for subdivisions through the final inspections of completed projects. And in addition, since we passed the drainage ordinance last year, they've been doing extra work, quite a bit of extra work related to that new ordinance. So they've been reviewing drainage studies and things of this sort on behalf of the parish, you know, for that additional work, all right? So I'd recommend approval unless there's any questions you have. I'm available to answer. And Sean Chiro with CSRS is here as well, all right? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ogeron.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Jerome, I noticed in the contract that there were some provisions that were added by the utilities department. More specifically, they're dealing with the sewer treatment. Those provisions were provisions 18 through 22. I know you and I had some conversation regarding that earlier today. Has CSRS agreed to remove those provisions as we discussed from this contract?
Yes, they have.
Okay, so we're going to get a revised contract that those will be put aside, allowing those issues to go to the Utilities Committee and then get voted on, hopefully at the next council meeting, correct?
That's correct, yes.
So with that being the case, Council Chair, I'm not sure what the procedure would be for us as a body to recognize that those changes have been made, to be able to vote on the contract as is. I'll leave that up to your capable hands to figure that one out for us.
We need a motion and a second to approve the modified contract.
Motion.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Lawler, second by Councilman Ogeron to approve the contract as with the amended scope of work. Are there any further questions? Mr. Robert.
I don't believe, I'm assuming this did not go out for bid. Does this apply to that type of project that goes out for bid? This is a renewal?
This is correct. It's a renewal.
Okay, is that something that we could look at doing with the cost of it and everything else, putting that back out for bid for other firms?
I think we have an option to renew it for this fiscal year. What we would very likely do is put it out for bid for the next year. All right.
Okay.
Mr. Waxback.
I just wanted to make sure I understood, since this is new to me. So we're actually voting to approve it, but those items that Corey talked about will be taken off. So we don't go back to the utilities to talk about the changes and then bring it back to the full council.
No, this is a planning and zoning matter. This is just removing these items from the agenda, from the contract scope.
Okay. Thanks, O'Neill. I appreciate that explanation. Thank you.
Mr. Melanson.
Oh yeah, item number 18. So if the issue is just with the sewer, can't you just remove sanitary sewer from that sentence and leave 18, because it also refers to technical matters related to parish-wide traffic, drainage, debt issuance, budgeting, and other matters?
Yeah, that's the intent, that we would remove just the words sanitary sewer from item 18, then would remove item 19, 20, 21, and 22, and leave the rest of the contract intact.
So what's the purpose of removing 19 through 22 is?
I'll let Council Member Ogeron address that.
Okay.
Council Chair, is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Chase, in reading that document and looking at those final four provisions, it opens up, there's a lot of vagueness as to whether or not this is asking CSRS to bill and collect from from the customers for Parish Sewer, whether or not they're going to start doing planning for additional sewer, regional sewer possibilities. So what I was proposing is that we have the opportunity to vet that through the Utilities Committee, find out exactly what that extent would be. Hopefully we can then condense it and make it a little clarified, a little more so that everyone feels comfortable. The reason I proposed it to Jerome in this manner is because I know that planning really needs to move this contract forward. They're at the end of their dollar amount. So I said, instead of holding up what Jerome needs to get done, let's pass it that way, and then let's talk about the things that I have questions about. That was it.
I'm game. Okay.
Mr. Lawler.
Yes, I have a question about the mechanism of the sewer being included, Jerome. Was that in 18 through 22? Was that part of the contract last year?
It was part of an amendment that the council approved last year around September, October of last year, and it was some additional work that we'd asked CSRS to do under the previous administration. We included that in this contract just to kind of keep that process going.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Lambert.
Yeah, thank you. And I also want to thank Sean for being there. We really leaned on him with the bill ordinance. What I'd like to do is make sure that we have the what he has for planning and for what he had for the drainage. If they could break that down and let us know how much. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would certainly like to take the opportunity to thank Sean. Those of you who were not on the council last year, you cannot imagine the hours that Sean Chereau spent with us, helping us to understand how we might best protect our parish. And certainly, I just am very much in his gratitude, in his debt, as I had very little understanding of elevations and flooding and how that affected the parish in the various parts of the parish, other than when I could see water. So I thank Sean very much. I support CSRS fully. They've been outstanding in the work that they do for the parish. And so I don't want that to go unsaid. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Mr. Melanson.
Yeah, Chairwoman. I'm sorry. One of the things I was going to say is have we ever thought about just as a body, trying to look into a cost analysis as far as the fees we pay CSRS, and there's nothing to do with them. I do think, for the most part, they do a good job for us. But just a cost analysis, $350,000 if we had a couple in-house engineers, traffic, drainage, if that's something that, maybe potentially we could save money on.
May I say something, Chairman?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, I want to add that CSRS does a lot more than just drainage analysis. They analyze the traffic studies that are prepared for the projects. They do drainage. They also make sure that all of the plats that are being pushed through with the parish meet standard codes and engineering standards throughout the country. They also have registered civil engineers. They're licensed in the state of Louisiana, and they provide a very professional service, as you mentioned, Chairman Casso. Last year they did a yeoman's work on helping us understand and prepare the fill ordinance and modifications to the drainage ordinance. So we have looked at the fees that we collect, from the development community to make sure that we're covering the expenses that are incurred by this contract. And the analysis we did, it was about a couple of years ago when we did a fee structure restructure, and we felt that the fees were in order. They are covering the cost. Now, naturally, things like their analysis of the drainage ordinance last year are not covered by fees, and we had to pick up that cost. And there are some instances where that does occur. But like I mentioned earlier, the majority of the cost of this contract is being picked up by fees. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I wasn't intentionally trying to go after Sean. I know they do a great job for us. I do have one more quick question. I'm sorry. So in 2019, the same year as we signed the CEA with Ascension Wastewater and them, we added this a few months later. We added those items 18 through 23.
We did. That was at the request of the previous infrastructure director.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Wagasback.
Yeah, no, so I'm learning a lot. I guess one request I would have in the future is if a renewal, something that's supposed to be simple like this, gets passed on to us, because I think we got a copy of this Tuesday. Any changes from the previous year could be redlined or noted in a different section, because there's really no way to know that those items were changed and why they were changed. So I think it adds a little bit of confusion. If we could do a red line copy or something like that besides that. So
I think that's a great idea. If everybody would please remember to mute, please. We're hearing all your conversations around your house. So please mute.
I do have one more question.
Sure,
I was listening to him talk about fees. So when you say fees, are we talking about permits and things like that pay for the services that CSRS provide, or are we talking about traffic impact fees, sewer impact fees also pay for that? Just to get that
different fees. The traffic impact fees and the sewer impact fees are different than the fees that we collect. We have a fee structure for when a developer, as an example, wants to push through a subdivision in the parish. We have a fee that we charge them that allows us to hire CSRS to review the package, that Sean will attend meetings, and these fees are structured for the application, for the review of the construction plans, the review of the final plats when they come out. There's a fee that we charge when we do the final inspection on subdivisions. So all of these are built into we have a fee for each of those items that the developer pays in order to cover the cost of their services.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
the traffic impact fees are different. Traffic impact fees are paid when they pull a building permit, and the sewer fees are paid in two installments, one when the final plat's approved and the other when a building permit's pulled.
Okay. Well, thank you. I apologize for my ignorance, but I sure do appreciate the the explanation. That helps me understand a lot better. Thank you.
You're not ignorant, Dal. You're learning, just like we've all done. All right, items M and N are already addressed. And item O, approval of, gentlemen, please mute.
Terry, you need to vote.
Vote on the CSRS contract.
I'm sorry. I got sidetracked myself. The previous item had a motion and a second. The discussion has ended. Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Thank you, Cinnamon.
Clarification, Terry, the motion and the second, that's for the amended.
Yes, for the amended scope of work.
Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome. O, approval to submit Bureau of Justice Assistance FY20 Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Fund Program 2020-2218 LAVD grant application. Ms. Martha.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the council. This was an appropriation that came out of the CARES Act. The parish was allocated $80,000, and we're going to be putting this application in for utilizing the funds for the needs of which the administration and the GIS and the OEP department. So we're pulling the group together to get a good application to make this money worthwhile.
Motion.
I have a motion by Mr. Mason, second by Mr. Cagnolotti. Are there any questions? Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item P, approval of a cooperative agreement between the Parish of Ascension and the Town of Sorrento, generator purchase under the FEMA HMGP 1786 DRLA number 128 grant, 75% federal, 25% local match. Ms. Martha.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This agenda item is related to F. When Mr. Dean came in and it failed to say that it was a grant, it would have had the same information as was listed on mine. This was, the Sorrento is part of one of the 5 that are going to be done from the generators. But they have to pay 25%. The grant pays 75%. So what we have to do is do a corporate endeavor agreement with the town of Sorrento for them to commit to the 25%, and then we purchase and install those in the generator. They will have a portable. They requested a portable, and that one will be.
Madam Chairman.
I have a motion by Mr. Cagnolotti, a second by Mr. Robert. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Approval of Q, approval of balancing change order T0-2-01 for 2019 asphalt reconstruction and overlay task 2 in the amount of $93,641.89 to balance out and pay in full task 2. Tracy? Great to see you.
Good evening. This change order is to increase task order 2 so that we can balance out the task. If you remember last month, we had an increase to the master contract, and this is just an increase to this task so that we can balance it out and close everything up. It includes all that you see listed. It's mainly striping on the different roads that were left off and a few large patches that were caused when soil cement and floor light mixed. And then lastly, we had to upgrade the base on East Hamilton. And so all of that was a total of $93,641.89.
Thank you. I think I saw Mr. Cagnolotti make a motion.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Mason. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. R, approval of an intergovernmental group. That one's already been done. Fantastic. S, approval of the lowest responsive bid for renovations at the Ascension Parish Jail. Did we get that one too, Cinnamon?
No.
No?
It needs to be voted on, but Mr. Thomason left, Terry. He thought he was done. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. This is the approval of a lowest responsive bid for renovations at the Ascension Parish Jail Women's Dormitory to include the 20,050 square feet interior renovations. Have a motion by Mr. Thomas and a second by Mr. Who had the motion? Excuse me.
Chase.
Had a motion by Chase Malassaw, second by Michael Mason. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item number 9, finance items, a revenue and expenditure report, and the monthly contract report, March and April. Is anyone going to address these issues?
No, we only put these in the packet, Terry, for your consumption.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any, there would not be any questions. If you gentlemen have any questions, you'll need to speak to, well, there's Mr. Diaz. If you have any questions from this revenue and expenditure report or monthly contract report, there's John Diaz. John,
and
comment you want?
Chairwoman.
Yes.
Yeah, and I am just prepared to speak on the March sales tax data. I know everybody was waiting for it to come out. On the 20th, we got the estimated data. It, you know, fortunately for us, we didn't publish it because it was very wrong. If you look at the Sales District 1 sales tax, when you consider the situation with the COVID-19, and when you also look at Q1 2020, and you look at January, where our sales tax was down 6.5% compared to March of 2019. You look at February, where it was down 8.6 compared to February of 2019. And to think that it's only down 1% in the month of March is pretty good. I mean, it just bodes well for our economy and our recovery. But I do want to remind you, as Councilman Cavallotti and Casso have reminded me constantly, the stay-at-home order was only in effect for 10 days in March. And so just in Sales Tax District 1, it impacted us, $23,000, which is really not significant, but it's real money. So if you was to amortize this out over a full month, we're looking at about a $71,000 loss, which is still not bad, with all things considered. So, I think we're in good shape, particularly when you look at the sales tax projections for the state. I just read an article, East Baton Rouge was 23 million in the hole. If this thing was to be twice as bad as what it is in March, at worst, we're probably in the hole about 121,000, and I'll take that 7 days a week and twice on Sunday. So,
John, thank you very much. I hope you're right. I do have on more than one occasion, as you attested to, as has Councilman Cagnolati cautioned you to wait until we get those April numbers before we really celebrate that we have not been severely impacted here. And I would caution all of our viewers to understand that our economy will not be back on May 15th or June 1st, that it will take time for the engine of economic development to regenerate and for those sales tax dollars to increase. So does anyone have any questions of Mr. Diaz? Thank you, John, for your report. We appreciate you very much. Item number 10, introduction of an ordinance. Chair would entertain a motion to introduce.
Motion introduced.
The budget amendment 1 to amend the 2020 budget, and I have a motion by Councilman Mason to introduce.
Second.
Item number 11, public hearing. Item A, reading of an ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish zoning map from medium intensity residential RM to Crossroads Commercial CC zoning review ID PZ 220920 for Dwight Poirier, duly authorized for the Robert Family Partnership number 1, located on the east side of Cully Broussard, approximately 300 feet north of LA Highway 42. Mr. Parrington.
This ordinance amends the official zoning designation, track 1 and track 2, per attached legal description for medium intensity residential to crossroad commercial. The rezone is identified as zoning review ID PZ 2209-20, whereas the Ascension Parish local government subdivision defined by Article 6, Section 44, Louisiana Constitution 1974, whereas the Parish of Ascension is the governing responsible body over zoning regulations within jurisdiction. Whereas Article 6 of the Home Rule Charter of Ascension Parish adopted May 4th, 1993, identifies the process and manner to adopt ordinances regulating the lands of the parish. Whereas the official zoning map for Ascension Parish was last adopted March 8, 2016, and whereas the council reserves the right to make changes to the official zoning map by ordinance, this request has been processed and complying with the procedures set forth. Be it ordained, the Ascension Parish governing authority and official zoning map of Ascension Parish, Louisiana, is amended to reflect the property described as Exhibit A as commercial crossroad as the official zoning designation. In the event any portion of the ordinance is ever held invalid or unconstitutional for any reason by any court of competent jurisdiction over it, such portions shall be deemed separate, distinct, and independent provisions, shall not affect the validity of remaining portions of the ordinance. This ordinance shall be in full effect, permitted by law. The exhibits of legal description, the plat map, the aerial zoning map. This ordinance submitted to a vote. The vote thereon was as follows.
Motion to open public hearing.
O'Neill, clarify for me if we have to open and close a public hearing. That period has already been had.
We've already had public hearings on the agenda.
Thank you very much. So there will not be any need for a motion. So the chair would entertain a motion to move the ordinance.
Motion to move the ordinance.
I have a motion to move the ordinance.
Second.
Mr. Robert, I believe that you will need to recuse.
Yes, ma'am, I'd like to recuse myself.
Thank you. I have a motion to move the ordinance. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Mason. Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item D, reading of an ordinance to amend the building department fee schedule. This is a finance committee recommendation. O'Neill.
To amend the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code, Appendix 7 fees, whereas the Ascension Parish local government subdivision defined by Article 6, Section 44, Louisiana Constitution, 1974. Whereas the Parish of Ascension is the governing responsible body over zoning regulations within the jurisdiction. Whereas Article 6 of the Home Rule Charter of Ascension Parish adopted May 4th, 1993, identifies the process and the manner in which to adopt ordinances regulating the lands in this parish. Now therefore be it ordained by the Ascension Parish governing authority that the Unified Land Development Code of Ascension Parish, Louisiana, Appendix 7 fees is amended as follows, is most fully described in Exhibit A attached to and made a part hereof. In the event any portion of the ordinance is ever held invalid or unconstitutional for any reason by any court of competent jurisdiction over it, such portion shall be deemed separate, distinct, and independent provisions, shall not affect the validity of remaining portions of the ordinance. The ordinance shall be in full effect as permitted by law. The ordinance has been submitted to a vote. The vote thereon was as follows. And Madam Chairman, there was a comment on this section that was done in the public comment area.
Thank you for that reminder. The chair would entertain a motion to move the ordinance.
Motion to move.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr. Mason and a second by Mr. Wagasback to move the ordinance. Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Yes, Mr. Mason.
I just want to ask Mr. I think Jerome just left, but it was in my understanding that all of this increase in fees was going to keep us on par with all the neighboring parishes around us, and the money that is going to be collected, the extra money that will be collected from this fee increase, will also go to the permitting department to help make them a little bit more efficient, whether it's hiring new employees or getting better systems. So I just wanted to confirm that with Mr. Jerome, but it looks like he left. So I guess we'll just hopefully.
I think in the committee hearings around this, that was the case, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael, for pointing that out.
Ms. Terry.
Yes, Mr. Lambert.
Yeah, Mr. Duplessis and with Cinnamon.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. On our outreach on this, how far did we go out? Did we give it to business and the builders to let them know about the race?
I did speak to a lot of the builders. I did not contact the Home Builders Association. The builders' responses were, they pay this everywhere else, and they were kind of just not shocked by this because it's been since 2009 they've had an increase in these fees. So I didn't get any complaints as far as the builders and things like that go.
Yeah, I appreciate you making that note. I had a few calls today, but it's the main thing that we are still we're not higher than some of our surrounding parishes, and we meet on some of the other ones. So I appreciate you letting that get out.
Mr. Mason.
Mr. Duplessis, I was also reached out to by a few people, and the Home Builder Association did ask in the future, whenever we decide to make these kinds of decisions, if they could just be brought into the table, just to be part of the conversation. That's completely up to you guys. I was just asked to pass the word along.
Absolutely.
Mr. Melanson.
Thank you very much.
Do we normally bring in the Home Builders Association for whenever we're writing policy? I mean, they got the same notice that all 120-something thousand Ascension Parish residents got, correct?
Correct. I did receive a phone call at 5:30, so I don't know if that was right before they sent the comment in or what, but that was the only call that I received. I hadn't got anything from them. Normally they'll contact us, but I didn't get anything from them before today.
Okay.
Mr. Robert. Your hand's up. All right, thank you very much. If everybody will put their hands down now, please, so I'm not, thank you very much. All right, so we had a motion and a second to approve. Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item G, reading of an ordinance to amend the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code, Appendix 5, Drainage, Section 17-507, Placement of Fill, B1, D2, and Section 50100, definitions, to add max chain wall height of 24 inches, to add a definition for a chain wall, and to increase the compaction test for commercial properties. This was a strategic planning recommendation. Mr. Parrington.
The Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code, Appendix 5, Drainage, Sections 17-507, Placement of Fill, B1, D2, Section 17-50100, definitions. Whereas the Ascension Parish local government subdivision is defined by Article 6, Section 44, Louisiana Constitution, 1974. Whereas the Parish of Ascension is the governing and responsible body of zoning and regulations within the jurisdiction. Whereas Article 6 of the Home Rule Charter of Ascension Parish, adopted May 4th, 1993, identifies the process and manner which should adopt ordinances regulating the lands of the parish. Now therefore be it ordained by the Ascension Parish governing authority that the Unified Land Development Code of Ascension Parish, Appendix 5, Drainage, Section 17-507, Placement of Fill, B1, D2, and Section 17-50100, definitions, is amended as more fully described in Exhibit A attached here to and made a part hereof. In the event any portion of the ordinance is upheld invalid or unconstitutional for any reason by any court of competent jurisdiction over it, such portion shall be deemed separate, distinct, and independent provisions, shall not affect the validity of remaining portions of the ordinance. The ordinance shall be in full effect submitted by law, and the ordinance has been submitted to a vote. The vote thereon was as follows.
Chair would entertain a motion to move the ordinance.
Motion.
Motion by Chase Melanson, second by Michael Mason. Are there any questions? Yes, Mr. Melanson.
I just like to make a comment real quick. So this is it really affects that Santa Maria, Galvez, Sorrento area. Joel Dempsey and I believe that this will help our constituents the most. I know it's parish wide, and a lot of the areas around here, in that 4 or 5 foot elevation, and over here, like in my area, we got to build up to around 10 foot right now. So this black and white definition that allowed them to have that 2 foot chain wall on top of their 36-inch max fill. We're not forcing everybody on piers. We are still giving them an option, even though it's a little more expensive. We're giving them an option to have that concrete foundation of their home, while also we're doing it responsibly. We're eliminating the 4, 5, 6, 7 foot dirt pads that we've been seeing for the past 10, 15 years, harming neighbors. So I believe we're still being responsible. We're looking out for our neighbors, and we're also helping the people on the eastern, southern side of the parish, still allow them to have that concrete foundation if they so choose. So I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Robert.
Yes, ma'am. Just to kind of go along with what Chase was saying, the purpose of the chain wall, the reason that this is responsible is because coming up with the chain wall to get that extra 2 foot actually eliminates a lot of land area that would normally have not held water. So it's actually displacing less water than it was before, because once you go so high, it doesn't matter anyway, you know. So the whole slope from the slab all the way down actually makes this better as far as water.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments? Mr. Lawler?
Yeah, I do have a question about the compaction test, and maybe I'm just, I don't understand this, but I was looking at it, and if you look at section I, you need 1 compaction test, and let's just take 1 foot of elevation. And the way it reads is for every 12 inches of elevation, you need to do a compaction test for every 1,000 square feet up to 5,000 feet. So if you just take 1 foot, and let's always assume 1 foot of elevation for this, you would need 5 compaction tests for a 5,000 square foot building. Yet in section 2, it says you only need a compaction test at every 2,500 square feet. So then you could build a 5,001 foot building and you'd only need 3 compaction tests. And you could build a 10,000 foot building and you'd only need 4 compaction tests. So you need less compaction tests than you would for somebody building a 5,000 square foot house or a 5,000 square foot building. Same with the next section 3 for 10,001 to 25,000. You only need 3 compaction tests on a 10,001 foot building. And the same goes for a 25,001 foot square footage building. We're saying you only need 3 compaction tests, yet if you build a 3,000 square foot house, you need the same amount of compaction tests. That doesn't make any sense.
I think Jerome can explain it.
At a total loss.
I'll try my best to explain that, but when it comes to the commercial structures, we're typically having an architectural design. We're having engineers that are preparing these, the slab and all the analysis that's associated with that. With some of the home builders, we're not getting that necessarily. So, you know, when it comes to the compaction test, we try to create an equilibrium between what's a commercial structure versus what is an ordinary residential structure, right? And typically we're getting signed off plans by engineers on the commercial structures, where we're not necessarily getting that all the time with the residential structures, right? So that's basically the reason for that. Additionally, and as we mentioned in the strategic planning committee meeting, we haven't had any complaints since I've been here at all about cracked foundations. We feel that the tests that are being conducted right now are adequate, more than adequate in a lot of cases. And you know, either it's if it's in the subdivision, or if it's on a residential lot, or if it's on a commercial structure, we haven't had any complaints at all in the parish about structural damage to foundations. So I'll just leave it at that. All right. So
I understand that. I guess my concern is we expect that when we have a large commercial building, it's engineered and it's going to be architecturally designed, but we're not requiring that. So I think we should either require that or that we have a different, if it's not having that type of construction and that type of engineering done, then they need to do more tests. And, you know, I'm of the opinion that if you're going to build a 5,000 square foot house, well, if I'm a home builder, I'm going to say, well, shoot, I'm just going to make it 5,001 and only have to do 3 tests. I believe that every residential structure should say that it has to be one test for every 1,000 square foot for every 1 foot of increase in fill. Because if I am going to build a large house, it just seems like it's a way around it, and it doesn't make much sense. I think this could be written slightly tighter to require residential have a certain standard, since they're not always going to be engineered, and to have, if we're going to allow commercial development to have some leeway, we have to require that what we're basing that leeway on is that they have certain standards, engineered and architecturally designed. And if they don't have that, then they shouldn't get that leeway.
The commercial projects, every one of them is designed by an engineer or an architect. Every commercial project that comes through the permit office has to be stamped. That's a state guideline that the fire marshal office enforces. So all of those are dealt with. And then on the residential side, we do take into consideration, because the building code addresses these compaction tests a different way than the ordinance. It actually requires every 8 inches, but it's been for years now, 12 inches in the ordinance. On these larger structures, if we feel the need that they do need to go the extra mile and get more tests, normally these builders, for their safety and the safety of the homeowner, they're going and getting those extra ones, even if we aren't actually requiring them to do so. So it's basically a case-by-case instance. So if we do have a larger type house that would exceed these limits and not necessarily meet the requirements of the building code, we do require more documentation.
I'm not completely comfortable, but I'll yield the table to others now.
Mr. Molson?
I also just wanted to let Councilman Waller know that it's not all residential either. Those are the numbers you are citing are only for individual homeowners. Developments only have to do 1 out of every 10 homes in the development. So if there's 100 houses in a neighborhood, only 10 of those homes have to have a compaction test.
So why didn't we change that?
We tried.
Mr. Robert.
I agree with Aaron on that aspect. I feel like the development should have to do as much as the individual homeowners, because more so they're at a worse situation because they have someone else doing all the work, where the individual owner gets to see it themselves. I mean, I feel like the bigger, larger development should have it at every home. That's a way to protect the constituents.
Mr. Ogeron.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I believe I heard Jerome correctly when he said that we have not had any complaints regarding cracked slabs during his tenure with the parish. Is that correct?
That is correct. Since I've been at the planning directorship, I have never heard of a complaint about a cracked slab.
And I think I asked this same question at strategic planning. If there's not a problem, why are we making changes? Why are we increasing the costs for these builders of commercial projects?
That question's not directed at me, is it?
Well, no. Whoever's proposing these changes, why would we want to make changes to something that's not broken? I guess that's my simple question. I don't have an answer.
Can I answer that?
Hang on, gentlemen. I'm waiting on Mr. Fournier or Davin to have a comment.
Yeah. I think that question was really brought up at the Strategic Planning Committee meeting, and so I'll let the committee members discuss that. All right.
Mr. Robert.
I just wanted to point out that the likelihood of someone reporting that to the parish is very small, because if you're going to have a cracked foundation, it's not going to be till 5-10 years down the road, and they're going to get it fixed. And if you want to get those, you can talk to some of the foundation companies. It's a very regular thing, because we are in the business of going to different homes and doing some work. And a lot of people do experience cracked foundations, and you see more in these commercial developments. I don't think we can really use just complaints to the parish to gauge that.
But I think just to address your comment, I believe that's what we're basing these changes on. We're basing the changes on, we see a problem, but there is no problem. And I guess what I'm getting at is, with so many things that we're doing, what's the basis for these changes? I look back to last year and the debacle that was this whole fill ordinance. And the complaint from most everyone was the fact that they were just pulling numbers out of the air. 3 foot was a very arbitrary number. And I'm curious as to whether or not 1 per every 5,000 square foot, 3 per every 10,000 square foot, if those were arbitrary numbers. Did we do a survey? Do we have any data that can support us making those changes? I mean, before we start affecting the livelihoods of our constituents, I believe we should have some data before us to support those particular changes.
Mr. Jerome, do you all have any comment on where these numbers came from?
I don't. I think that when the ordinance was first put together and the compaction standards were developed at that time, it was the best practices that we had. They seem to be continuing on those. As Mr. Duplessis said about the commercial projects, you know, they're being stamped by an engineer or an architect. We know that they're certified. You know, so I don't have any other comments on that.
Mr. Malonzo.
Yeah, whenever I propose the changes as well, it's also about equality across the board. Why does the individual homeowner who has a half-acre lot or a 1 acre lot, why is he performing 10 times the compaction test that somebody who's putting 3 or 4 homes on an acre of lot and making a development? And the same thing with commercial. It's based off of per square footage. Why should one home or building in the parish be any different than the other? I have a home, I have a shop with 2 foot pads. I prefer, and I did 4 compaction tests. In a development, you know, they wouldn't have had the same. In commercial, based off square footage, I think they would have had to perform 1. So it's a blanket policy across the board. Why make, you know, Joe the plumber have X amount of compaction tests and then somebody else doesn't have to.
And Chase, with that comment, I agree with you. I think there should be a study. I think there should be some sort of rational decision as to why we're pulling these numbers out the air. The fact remains, you know, I don't think we should be onerous on the individual homeowners who are building their homes. But if we have a law that's onerous on one segment of society, that doesn't justify us being overly onerous on other sections. We should cure that problem rather than penalize others. And that's just my opinion. But you know, I'm looking at the same thing with the chain wall issue. How did we come up with a 2 foot chain wall? Why did we not come up with a 3 foot chain wall? Is there a particular standard that we base this on? Are we doing that kind of research, or are we still just arbitrarily coming up with numbers, throwing them out there and saying, let's make somebody feel good? I think we owe more to the public than that. That's just, you know.
Yeah, I with the 2 foot chain wall.
GH&I, that's the problem I have with it.
Gentlemen, if you all don't mind, I would like to be able to control who speaks. So if you would just raise your hand if you have a comment. Mr. Robert, you've been patient.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. My answer to it not being an arbitrary number for the commercial is clear. I mean, 1 per house. You know, there's nothing arbitrary about that. Each homeowner should have the right to know that their pad is the compaction that it should be. The other point that you make, the square footage, the 2 feet, if you want to reduce them on the residential, I'm okay with that. You know, but I feel like the people that stand the most to gain are the developers, not the homeowners. So why do the homeowners have to do it and the developers don't per house? And I mean, 1 house, that's not arbitrary, that's 1 house, 1 house.
Mr. Lawler.
Yes, this is a question for legal. We can have an equal application issue if we're saying that developers have something different than an individual homeowner.
No, because they do compaction throughout the subdivision for developing roads and everything else like that. It's not like they go, it's not an equal thing in that way. They have compaction checks that are done throughout the entire thing just to build their roads alone. So we know the compaction of the soil already in the subdivisions. They can't build roads without meeting all kind of requirements and things like that.
Jerome, do you have any comment on that?
Well, I want to say that in the subdivisions, we require them to do compaction tests based on the ordinance. If we find deficiencies, they have to do more compaction tests. If the deficiencies continue to occur during those tests, they have to do even more, right? So basically what we're trying to do is they do a random sampling of tests around the site. If they find a deficiency, they expand the area where they have to do the compaction test. If we find more problems, we expand that even further, right? So there is an opportunity to test the entire site if we keep finding deficiencies. But, you know, we have to remember too that a lot of these all of the subdivisions, in fact, are designed by civil engineers, and that includes the pad structure, the fill structure, if there's any fill, and all of these are signed off by engineers, right?
Thank you. This was the debate that was had in strategic. This is the ordinance that was recommended out of strategic. Mr. Robert.
I was just going to say, in my theory of things, as protecting my constituents, I mean, I think the constituents that are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for a home deserve a compaction test. Not to do, oh, well, if you find one here, then you don't find one there. I mean, they each deserve one. Why are we giving the developers a pass on that?
I would only remind you, Mr. Robert, that cost will be passed on to your constituent. Mr. Melanson.
And yes, ma'am, that's fine, but at least they have the sound mind of knowing their foundation's not going to crack in their house they can fall apart 10 years from now.
Absolutely. And I think we had this argument in strategic. It's no point to I'm not going to relitigate it here. Mr. Melanson.
Yeah, just real quick, Councilman Orgeron asked a good question about the 24 inches, and I don't have it with me, but back in February when they went through it, and I did the math, that extra 2 foot of fill, had it been a 5 foot dirt pad, right? And then you add that 2 foot of fill, and once you calculate in that sloping, it was roughly like 40 or 42% of fill because of the sloping that we would still be reducing by doing the 24-inch chain wall instead of still allowing a 5 foot dirt. So so that's a lot less fill we're putting in the floodplain, and also that sloping is a lot further away from the neighbors now, and that's kind of where and also I had a lot of productive conversations with Chairwoman and the planning guys and whatnot. But that's kind of where I got the 2 foot from.
Yeah, I would like for you to know, Corey, I don't think we were pulling numbers out of the air. I mean, we had many discussions with Jerome, with builders, with our building department. I mean, I really do believe that there was some significant thought that went into that. But I do understand your concern that we not just pull numbers out of the air. I think it's very important that we have professional folks contribute what they believe is best practices. So is there any further discussion? We have a motion. I believe we have a motion and a second already. Ms. Dozeron, you have any further comment?
Yes, Council Chairwoman. And maybe this needs to go to O'Neill, because my concern with the 2 foot fill is if it was something that becomes arbitrary and capricious in our just decision making. My fear is that if we haven't based that on sufficient data, then someone can come back into the parish and file suit against the parish for not thinking it through, just like we're seeing, with the 3 foot fill condition. So maybe that's my lawyer hat. Maybe I'm being overly concerned about it. But if we're not backing up our decisions with expert data, I think we're doing a harm and a misjustice to our constituents. And that's just where I'm coming from. I'm okay with 2 foot. I'm okay with 3 foot, as long as we have somebody behind us that's backs it and says, this is the way to go. And I think O'Neill would agree with that.
And because of that, those issues, we include a provision in this ordinance. The field ordinance has a variance ordinance that anyone feels that they are not being treated. Anybody can bring any of those issues and seek a variance to address their particular problem. That's why we put that variance process in there.
And that variance process is also associated with this particular.
It's in the field ordinance, yes. There's a field ordinance that if you feel that that you have a problem, anybody can bring their problem and seek a variance and prove engineering wise why their plan should work.
Fantastic. That helps ease my mind a little, not completely, but at least a little. Thanks.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Are there any, Mr. Lawler?
Is my hand still up? I apologize.
Oh, that's okay.
I apologize.
Everybody put your hand down. Thank you very much. So are there any objections to ordinance as read by Mr. Parrington? Mr. Ogeron?
Yes, ma'am.
So I have an objection. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Councilman Thomas.
Substitute motion. Can I amend the motion to require a compaction test for every home in a commercial development?
You may attempt to amend if someone will second your motion.
How do we state that?
Okay. I make a motion to I make the motion to amend the commercial developments to be equal as the residential and require at least 1 compaction test per home.
That dies for lack of a second. And so we will move on now with the original motion. And second, and the vote. We had roll call sentiment.
Councilman Thomas.
What is it that we are voting on?
We're voting on ordinance I that we've been, as it is written.
I understand. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Councilman Robert.
No.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Councilman Orgeron.
No.
Councilman
Yes.
Councilman Melanson.
Councilman Melanson, you need to vote.
Chase.
Councilman Melanson.
I'd like to put my amendment in again because obviously if Melanson didn't hear it.
We'll move on to Councilman Lawler for right now. Councilman Lawler.
Can y'all hear me? Hello?
Hey, Chase.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm sorry. I missed the last 3-4 minutes.
Did you hear my motion?
We're having a vote on the original ordinance as it was submitted, Chase, and it's your turn to vote.
Yes.
Councilman Lawler.
No.
Madam Chair, since Councilman Melanson didn't hear my motion, can he have an opportunity to second it?
We will consider it at the end of this vote. You can always amend you can make another motion at that point.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Am I right, O'Neill? I mean, he can make a motion to amend? Or should I go back and reconsider now? So we're having some,
I recommend that we reconsider now, just out of fairness.
yeah, I'm
Yes, I
fine with
agree.
that. I'm trying to get, I mean, obviously, we're having some technical difficulties.
Sarah, we're back.
Okay. So
We lost everything for a second, but we're back and we're on roll call with Councilman Lawler.
Okay, so I think in fairness, I agree with Aaron. I thought we could probably go back. I'm trying to think this through in my head as fast as I can, but I think we can go back and allow Joel to amend his motion and see if he can get a second for that. Produce his amended motion, see if he can get a second for that. Since Chase must have not been available at that time, and then we may be back voting again on this same motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
This was a strategic planning recommendation.
Okay, I would like to amend the motion to require developers to submit a compaction test for every lot in the subdivision, as do the residential single homeowners.
Ms. Moss, I still, pardon?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second for the amended motion. Are there any objections? I object, and so Ms. Dozier. So let's have a roll call again.
Thomas, object.
So we're voting, just to be clear, we're voting on the amended motion by Joel Robert.
Correct.
Councilman Thomas,
Object.
would that be a no, Councilman Thomas?
Yeah, no.
Councilman Robert?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
No.
Councilman Orgeron?
No.
Councilman Lambert?
No.
Councilman Melancon?
Yes.
Councilman Lawler?
No.
Councilman Wagasback?
No.
Councilman Cagnolati?
Yes.
Councilman Mason?
I meant no. No. I meant no.
All right, Kag. All right, Kag, is it yes or no? You corrected in time.
It's a no.
All right.
Councilman Mason?
Yes.
Chairwoman Casso?
No. I almost did it too, John. The noes prevail, and we'll go back to the original ordinance as recommended by strategic and the original motion. There was an objection, so we'll have a roll call.
Councilman Thomas?
Yes.
Councilman Robert?
No.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Councilman Orgeron?
No.
Councilman Lambert?
Yes.
Councilman Melancon?
Yes.
Councilman Lawler? Councilman
No.
Lawler?
No.
Councilman Wagasback?
Yes.
Councilman Cagnolati?
Yes.
Councilman Mason?
Yes.
Chairwoman Casso?
Yes. The yeas prevail. The ordinance is passed. Item J, reading of an ordinance to revoke a 15-foot servitude running along the eastern property line of Lot 4A1 and Lot 4A2, now Lot 4A2A, both owned by Henry E. Ingram Jr., moved to council via UDC 4050B2A.
Revoke the 15-foot servitude running along the eastern property line of Lot 4A1 and former Lot 4A2, now Lot 4A2A, both owned by Henry Ingram Jr. Property is depicted on the map showing exchange of property of Lot 4A1 of the Henry Ingram Jr. property and lots B9A, B9B, B9C1 of the Greg Lambert property into lots A2, 4A2A, B1, B9A1, B9B1, B9BC1-A for Henry Ingram by Lester A. McGlynn and McGlynn Associates dated May 28, 2013, recorded at instrument number 83026-276. The petitioner Henry Ingram has petitioned the Ascension Parish Council to revoke a 15-foot servitude running along the eastern property line of Lot A1 and former Lot A2, now Lot 4A2A, and both owned by Henry Ingram Jr. Property is depicted on a map showing exchange of property of lots 4A1 of the Henry Ingram Jr. property and lots B9A, B9B, and B9C1 of the Greg Lambert property into lots 4A2A and B91A, B9B1, and B9C1A for Henry E. Ingram Jr. by Lester A. McGlynn and McGlynn Associates dated May 18, 2013, and recorded instrument number 83026. And whereas the Planning Commission and Engineering Department have reviewed and researched and requested and have no objection to the revocation, the Parish of Ascension hereby ordains that it grants the approval and revoke a 15-foot servitude running along the eastern property line of Lot 4A1 and former Lot 4A2, now Lot 4A2A, and both owned by Henry Ingram Jr. Property is depicted on the map showing the exchange of property of Lot 4A1 of the Henry E. Ingram property and lots B9A, B9B, B9C1, and of the Greg Lambert property into lots 4A2A and lot B9A1, B9B2, B9C1A for Henry E. Ingram Jr. by Lester McGlynn and McGlynn Associates dated May 28, 2013, and recorded as instrument number 83026, used as the basis for the exhibit attached to made a part hereof. All ordinances, reports, or ordinances in conflict herewith, here and henceforth repealed. If any provision of the ordinance itself is invalid, such invalidity shall not affect the other provisions herein, which shall be given effect without the invalid provisions. And to this end, the ordinance are hereby declared to be severable. The ordinance shall be effective 15 days after adoption. The ordinance have been submitted to a vote. The vote thereon was as follows.
I make a motion.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a second. A motion to move the ordinance, seconded by Mr. Cagnolati. The primary motion was by Mr. Robert. Are there any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item M, reading of an ordinance to revoke a 60-foot servitude of passage and a 100-foot by 100-foot water well site servitude running along the western property line of Lot 55, owned by Paul Knapp, and the eastern property line of Lot 56, owned by Steve Hutchinson of the Woodland Shire subdivision.
Ready?
Mr.
To revoke
Parish.
60-foot servitude of passage and 100-foot by 100-foot water well site servitude running along the western property line of Lot 55, owned by Paul Knapp, and the eastern property line of Lot 56, owned by Steve Hutchinson of the Woodland Shire subdivision. Property is depicted on the final plat of Woodland Shire by Norris Decado, ADCO Engineers and Planners, Inc., dated August 7, 1979, and recorded at instrument number 209446. Wherefore, the petitioners Paul Knapp and Steve Hutchinson have petitioned the Ascension Parish Council to revoke a 60-foot servitude of passage and a 100-foot by 100-foot water well site running along the western property line of Lot 55 owned by Paul Knapp and the eastern property line of Lot 56 owned by Steve Hutchinson of the Woodland Shire subdivision property. Property is depicted in the final plat of Woodland Shire by Norris Decato of ADCO Engineers and Planners Inc. dated August 7, 1979 and recorded at instrument number 209446. Whereas the Planning Department and Engineering Department have reviewed and researched the request and have no objection to the revocation. The Parish of Ascension hereby ordains that it grants approval to revoke a 60-foot servitude of passage and a 100-foot by 100-foot water well site servitude running along the western property line of Lot 55 owned by Paul Knapp and the eastern property line of Lot 56 owned by Steve Hutchinson of the Woodland Shire subdivision property as depicted on the final plat of Woodland Shire by Norris Decato, ADCO Engineers and Planners Inc. dated August 7, 1979 and recorded instrument number 209446. Used as the basis of the exhibit attached here to made a part as exhibit A and B. All ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith are hereby henceforth repealed. If any provision of the ordinance is held invalid, such invalidity.
Motion.
I have a motion by Councilman Dempsey Lambert, second by Councilman Aaron Lawler. Are there any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Gentlemen, before we adjourn, I want to thank you all for the wonderful discussion tonight. Thank you very much. I think we all did a great job again in our virtual meeting. It's not quite as easy as being there together in public, but I appreciate you all. And I apologize if I got a little ragged there toward the end. I was getting a little tired, to be honest with you. So if any of you have any other comments you'd like to make, I welcome that now.
I just wanted to thank you, Madam Chair. You did a great job doing that yourself.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Good job, gentlemen. Thank y'all so much. Senator O'Neill, thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, everybody.
Third. Can't hear.
Please note, the meeting is no longer being recorded. The meeting is about